Hi, automotive enthusiasts. Welcome to Cam and Crank, where today we're diving into the story of what many call the most mythical machine ever to wear the Ferrari badge, the 1962 Ferrari 250 GTO. This isn't just another classic sports car. It's a legend that reshaped motorsport, rewrote the language of automotive design, and has since become the crown jewel of the collector world. When we say Holy Grail, we're not exaggerating. This car has been at the center of triumph, controversy, and staggering financial transactions that push it far beyond the realm of automobiles and into the world of cultural icons. Imagine a time when racing was less about corporations and more about daring individuals, when the roar of a 12-cylinder engine could carry a team to immortality. That was the world into which the 250 GTO was born. It was never meant to be common. Just 36 were hand-built over 2 short years, each one slightly different, each one touched by the human hand and guided by the competitive fire of Enzo Ferrari himself. But scarcity alone doesn't create a myth. The real story begins on the racetrack, where the GTO outmaneuvered bigger engines and wealthier rivals with a perfect balance of power, agility, and endurance. It proved itself not in one race, but again and again, across continents and under conditions that pushed machines and drivers to the brink. And yet, victory was only the first chapter. Over decades, as racing rules evolved and technologies changed, the GTO moved from competition weapon to priceless treasure. Its legacy growing with every story of a privateer who dared to challenge the giants, every glimpse of its timeless curves at an auction, every record-shattering sale that left the world stunned. In this video, we're going to trace that journey in full. How the 250 GTO was conceived in secrecy and born out of necessity. How it etched its name into motorsport history through cunning design and fierce willpower, and how it ultimately transcended racing to become a global symbol of rarity, value, and human obsession. By the end, you'll see why the 250 GTO isn't just a Ferrari, or even just a car. It's a living artifact of speed, beauty, and ambition. Buckle in, because the ride begins where Ferrari's need for dominance met the challenge of the world stage, and from there the story only grows more dramatic. The Ferrari 250 GTO emerged at a critical turning point in motorsport history, when regulations, rivalries, and reputations collided to create both opportunity and chaos. Ferrari needed a car that could dominate the new FIA Group 3 Grand Touring category, which required homologation of at least 100 road cars. But Enzo Ferrari, never one to play by the rules exactly as written, had a different plan. He authorized just 36 cars, arguing each was built with necessary variations, and pushed the homologation paperwork through by sheer force of influence. This sleight of hand allowed the GTO to exist legally, and in doing so, he created a loophole legend: micro-story. The secret workshops of Maranello buzzed like hives of precision in late 1961. Engineers worked long nights under Giotto Bizzarini, the lead designer, sculpting aluminum body panels over wooden bucks. The body wasn't just beautiful, it was functional, shaped through trial and error on Ferrari's makeshift wind tunnels. At one point, they tested the prototype on Italy's highways, with Bizzarini himself hanging out of the passenger side to watch how airflow moved across the car. It was unorthodox, dangerous, and pure Ferrari. This devotion produced a body that sliced through air better than most rivals could dream of. Micro-story. Inside Ferrari's ranks, tension simmered. Key engineers disagreed with Enzo's controlling style, leading to the infamous Palace Revolt, where Bizzarini and others walked out in 1961. Yet the GTO survived. Refined under Mauro Forghieri, a young engineer who inherited the project midstream. What could have been a disaster instead became a testament to Ferrari's resilience. The handoff of responsibility resulted in a more cohesive machine, blending proven V12 power with aerodynamic discipline. Rival teams laughed at the chaos, but within months, the GTO would silence them on the track. Context Digest. Under its hood sat the Colombo 3.0-liter V12, a jewel of engineering with 6 twin-choke Weber carburetors feeding 300 horsepower. In plain language, it was an engine tuned for stamina as much as for speed, delivering linear power across brutal long-distance races. Unlike rivals who bet on larger engines, Ferrari trusted finesse. Paired with a lightweight chassis and carefully balanced weight distribution, the GTO handled like no other car in its class. This harmony between engine, handling, and aerodynamics was what made it a true grand tourer that could also conquer endurance races. reflection bridge. Every bolt of the GTO was born from both ingenuity and internal conflict. That duality gave the car its unique DNA. Microstory. The first proving ground came in 1962 at the 12 Hours of Sebring. Ferrari entered the GTO against Shelby's new Cobras and Aston Martins. Despite being outgunned on paper, the GTO finished second overall, a staggering result for a GT car. Privateer drivers couldn't believe how forgiving the car was under pressure. It allowed aggressive cornering without punishing mistakes. That resilience made the GTO a perfect companion for long races where concentration faltered but performance had to remain razor sharp. It wasn't just a fast car, it was a forgiving teacher. Context digest. Racing in the 1960s wasn't only about engineering. It was about politics and prestige. Ferrari's victories elevated Italy's national pride, reinforcing Enzo's personal image as the guardian of speed. Winning in GT categories mattered because it showed that Ferrari could dominate cars closer to what wealthy customers might actually drive. Each victory translated to showroom credibility, further fueling Ferrari's mystique. The GTO became a halo, linking competition glory directly to the brand's allure. Microstory. At Le Mans in 1962, Ferrari faced its biggest test. Jaguar's E-Type was fast, and Aston Martin's DP212 looked menacing. Yet the GTO not only survived but triumphed in the GT class, beating rivals through consistency and discipline. Drivers spoke of how the car seemed to settle into a rhythm, almost as if it wanted to endure. Its long nose sliced the air on the Mulsanne straight, while its nimble balance allowed it to glide through tight corners. Le Mans cemented the GTO's reputation not as a novelty, but as a new standard, reflection bridge. With each victory, the GTO built an aura that went beyond lap times. It became a machine that carried reputations, dreams, and national pride on its sculpted shoulders. Microstory. Beyond the factory-backed entries, privateer stories gave the GTO even more color. Count Giovanni Volpi di Misurata, a wealthy Venetian aristocrat, ran his GTO against Ferrari's wishes after a personal falling out with Enzo. Others included eccentric playboys and passionate amateurs who bought GTOs to chase glory. These weren't corporate teams. They were individuals with wealth, courage, and sometimes recklessness. The GTO gave them the weapon to take on giants, and when they succeeded, it added layers of myth to the car's narrative. Context digest. By 1963, the GTO had won the International Championship for GT manufacturers 2 years in a row, with Ferrari sweeping rivals aside. The car's run seemed unstoppable. It wasn't the most powerful, but it was the most complete package, durable, efficient, and elegant. The press began to treat the GTO as not just another Ferrari, but a masterpiece of the era. Scarcity was already brewing interest, but its victories ensured it would never be forgotten. Microstory. Not all was smooth. Ferrari's rivals pushed back, accusing the company of bending homologation rules. Protests were filed, arguments staged in paddocks, and whispered campaigns spread through the racing world. Yet none of it could erase the fact that the GTO was legal on paper and unbeatable on track. In many ways, the protests only amplified the GTO's aura, a car so good it made competitors cry foul. Its legend was being written as much by controversy as by trophies. And as the racing triumphs stacked up, the GTO's story began to shift. What started as a weapon for championships slowly transformed into something else, a collector's dream, destined to live far beyond the racetrack. As the mid-1960s arrived, the Ferrari 250 GTO began its transition from frontline racer to revered artifact, and that shift only deepened its mystique. Though technology moved forward and Ferrari introduced newer, faster machines, the GTO had already cemented its dominance. Retired from top-level racing, many of these cars passed into the hands of private owners, often at prices that seemed modest compared to their later astronomical value. It was in this twilight period that the seeds of the GTO's collector mythos began to take root. Microstory. In 1964, Ferrari introduced the 250 GTO Series 2 with subtle styling updates, but only 3 were built. The rarity of these later cars created instant intrigue, as they represented the final evolution of the original formula. Enthusiasts noticed how even small design tweaks could change the GTO's aerodynamic profile, and debates about which version was purer added to its legend. Meanwhile, earlier GTOs continued to win at club races and hill climbs, proving their durability long after factory support ended. The idea that a car could remain competitive years beyond its intended lifespan made collectors look at it differently, not just as a tool for racing, but as an enduring work of art. Context digest. By the late 1960s and into the 1970s, the market for vintage Ferraris was still developing. GTOs changed hands quietly, sometimes for sums under $10,000, a fraction of what they had cost new. Wealthy enthusiasts viewed them as beautiful curiosities, not yet as investments. This period was crucial because it allowed the cars to scatter globally, ending up in private collections from Europe to North America. Each new owner became a storyteller, carrying the car into fresh context and preserving its racing heritage through casual use on roads and tracks. Microstory. In the 1970s, a handful of visionary collectors began to see what others missed. One was Anthony Bamford in the UK, who acquired a GTO and treated it not just as a toy, but as a cultural treasure. Another was American collector Ralph Lauren, who would later showcase his GTO alongside fashion and art. These early champions helped shift perception, framing the car as more than machinery. It was history on wheels. Their influence planted the idea that owning a GTO was akin to owning a Rembrandt or a Stradivarius violin. Reflection bridge. As collectors began to awaken to the GTO's true significance, the car moved from being a retired racer into a currency of cultural prestige. Micro story. The auction scene of the 1980s became a pivotal stage. As global wealth surged, rare Ferraris suddenly skyrocketed in value, and the GTO led the charge. In 1984, a GTO sold for over $1 million, an unheard-of figure for a car at the time. Newspapers declared the market insane, but to collectors it was validation that the GTO was not merely valuable, it was priceless. This shift turned the GTO into a headline machine, sparking a frenzy that would only intensify in decades to come. Context digest. What fueled this explosion was scarcity. With just 36 examples, every transaction became a newsworthy event. Owners realized they held something irreplaceable, and that fueled a sense of exclusivity. Unlike mass-produced classics, the GTO couldn't be replicated or substituted. It was a fixed quantity, yet demand only grew as global billionaires entered the collector market. The result was a feedback loop. The rarer it appeared, the higher its value climbed and the higher its value. The more secretive and coveted it became. Microstory, the 1990s brought both boom and bust. Prices peaked and then fell during a wider market crash, yet the GTO held firm compared to lesser classics. Owners who weathered the downturn came out stronger, and the GTO's resilience reinforced its aura. By the time markets recovered, it was clear that this wasn't a bubble item. It was a blue-chip asset. Wealthy buyers began treating it like fine art, insuring it, exhibiting it, and speaking of it in the same breath as priceless cultural relics. The GTO's legacy had outgrown Ferrari itself. Reflection bridge. The car's story now belonged not only to racing history, but to global culture, with every new sale rewriting what it meant to value heritage and beauty. Microstory. The 21st century has seen the GTO repeatedly break auction records, with sales climbing past $35 million, $48 million, and even $70 million. Each time the world paused to ask, how could any car be worth this much? The answer lay in the GTO's layered identity. It wasn't only a Ferrari or a race car, it was a symbol of victory, scarcity, and perfection. Billionaires battled for the right to own one, while enthusiasts around the world gazed in awe, knowing they would likely never see, let alone touch, one of these machines. It became less an object to drive and more a trophy of human desire. Context digest. Today, events like the Pebble Beach Concours d'Elegance and the Goodwood Festival of Speed bring GTOs into public view, if only briefly. Crowds gather as if seeing a celebrity because the cars have transcended function. They represent a bygone era of analog purity, a time when human courage and mechanical artistry determined victory. Museums, collectors, and corporations display them like jewels, reinforcing their untouchable status. Each public appearance strengthens the mythology, ensuring the GTO remains larger than life. Microstory. But perhaps the most compelling part of the GTO's modern story is that it still runs. Unlike paintings locked in climate-controlled galleries, these cars occasionally thunder back onto tracks, their engines echoing across decades. Seeing one in motion connects past to present, reminding us that legends are alive, not static. When a GTO laps Goodwood or climbs a hill in Italy, it proves its legacy is not just about price tags or prestige, but about a machine fulfilling its destiny again and again. And as the GTO lives on in both motion and myth, its story moves towards something even more profound, the lessons it leaves for the future of automotive culture and what true value really means. The Ferrari 250 GTO's legacy now extends far beyond the boundaries of racing history or the collector market. It represents a moment in time when engineering genius, human ambition, and cultural symbolism converged in a way that may never be repeated. By the 2010s, the car's reputation as the Holy Grail was no longer just a label from enthusiasts. It was recognized across finance, art, and even mainstream media. Whenever a GTO appeared on the auction block, newspapers from London to New York ran headlines about staggering prices. And even those who knew little about cars understood that this machine carried a significance larger than horsepower or lap times. Microstory. One defining moment came in 2018 when a pristine GTO sold for over $70 million in a private sale, setting a record that stunned the world. The figure wasn't merely about rarity, it was about what the car symbolized to those who could afford it. To own a GTO was to hold proof of victory, beauty, and exclusivity in one package. The buyer wasn't just purchasing a Ferrari, they were purchasing the story of an era, a piece of rolling history that no museum or replica could ever replicate. The world reacted with disbelief, but collectors understood. This was the ultimate convergence of desire and scarcity. Context, digest. Financial analysts often compare the GTO to fine art, calling it an alternative asset class. That comparison reflects its transformation from machine to cultural artifact. Unlike a Picasso, however, the GTO still roars to life. Its value isn't just locked in visual admiration, it has kinetic reality. When a GTO's V12 fires up, it bridges worlds, past and present, competition and collection, utility and symbolism. This rare duality makes it a case study in how objects acquire meaning far beyond their original purpose. Microstory. At gatherings like Pebble Beach, when multiple GTOs line up side by side, the sight is almost surreal. Each car carries scars, stories, and provenance, yet together they form a chorus of history. Spectators stand in reverence, snapping photos as though witnessing a sacred relic. The atmosphere feels less like a car show and more like a pilgrimage. For many enthusiasts, these moments are once-in-a-lifetime experiences, where the aura of the GTO can be felt, if not owned. Reflection Bridge. The reverence surrounding the GTO reveals a truth about us as much as about the car. We are drawn to stories that fuse beauty, rarity, and triumph into something tangible. Microstory. Yet the GTO's impact is not just about nostalgia. Designers and engineers today still look back at its lines and proportions for inspiration. Its shape, born from necessity and intuition rather than computer simulations, remains timeless. Supercars and hypercars of the modern era may boast advanced aerodynamics, but few achieve the effortless balance of aggression and elegance that the GTO embodies. The car reminds us that true design is not only about function, but about soul. It continues to whisper lessons to anyone daring to create the next automotive masterpiece. Context digest. Cultural critics often note how the GTO reflects the broader human impulse to mythologize objects. Just as explorers' ships, legendary guitars, or ancient manuscripts become symbols of human endeavor, the GTO stands as a physical record of competition, ambition, and artistry. The fascination is not only about the car itself, but what it represents. The desire to conquer time, to preserve excellence, to possess something that cannot be duplicated. In this way, the GTO transcends automotive culture and becomes a universal story about human longing. Microstory. Owners of GTOs often describe the responsibility of stewardship. They rarely see themselves as simple proprietors. Instead, they feel they are custodians of history. The car's rarity means that every scratch, every restoration decision becomes part of an ongoing narrative. Some keep their cars hidden, while others share them with the public at historic races or exhibitions. This divide between secrecy and display adds another layer of intrigue. Each decision shapes how the world experiences the GTO, and each reinforces its role as more than a machine. It is heritage embodied. Reflection bridge. When we look at the GTO today, we are not only seeing a Ferrari, we are seeing how humanity itself chooses to value achievement, scarcity, and beauty. Micro story. The most enduring image may be of a GTO still racing decades after its prime, driven by an owner unafraid to unleash its power. Crowds cheer as the V12 bellows once more, proof that history is alive and not locked in silence. In that roar is a reminder. The GTO's story was forged in action, not in glass cases. Its survival and continued use are what make it unique among legendary artifacts. It is both relic and warrior, saint and gladiator. That paradox is why it continues to capture imaginations across generations. Context digest. Ultimately, the Ferrari 250 GTO has become a mirror. To billionaires, it reflects ultimate exclusivity. To designers, it reflects timeless craft. To enthusiasts, it reflects the purest expression of racing heritage. To culture at large, it reflects how we assign meaning and value to objects that carry more than material worth. Its story is not just automotive, it is universal. And that is why its place in history feels immovable, even as technology and tastes evolve. And so, as the 250 GTO continues to inspire awe in the 21st century, its legacy challenges us to ask what we will carry forward. Is it the engineering, the beauty, or the spirit of ambition that defines its immortality? The answer perhaps is all three. The Ferrari 250 GTO has taken us on a journey through secrecy, rivalry, triumph, and transformation, showing how a car can become something much more than the sum of its parts. From the moment Enzo Ferrari bent the rules to create it, to the nights in Maranello where engineers shaped its curves by hand, to the glory of endurance races where it humbled rivals, the GTO's story has always been about pushing boundaries. It was never just about winning trophies. It was about proving that perfection could be built when vision and determination collided. As time passed, that perfection shifted from racetrack results to cultural value, and the GTO carried its legend into a new arena. Collectors elevated it to the realm of art, investors treated it as treasure, and enthusiasts cherished it as a dream that defined what a car could mean. Each sale, each sighting, each start of its V12 reinforced that it was not only a Ferrari, but a symbol of ambition made real. What makes the GTO so compelling is its ability to connect worlds. It bridges racing and collecting, past and future, utility and mythology. It speaks to those who will never sit behind its wheel just as powerfully as it does to those fortunate enough to own one. That universality, its ability to stir imagination across cultures and generations, is why it has remained untouchable. And yet at its core, the GTO is still a machine built to move, to thunder down straights and carve through corners. The fact that some owners still let them run, decades after their debut, keeps the legend alive in motion rather than in silence. For us, it remains a reminder that greatness comes not from conformity, but from audacity, risk, and vision. That is the real inheritance of the Ferrari 250 GTO. It teaches us that history is not just remembered, but lived, and that beauty, when combined with purpose, can achieve immortality. Thanks for riding with us on Cam and Crank. See you next time, automotive enthusiasts.